Tonight we slip into a world where light and shadow dance together across cracked linen screens, and ancient stories stretch their arms across centuries just to tuck you in. You're crouched beneath the low, arched ceiling of a Javanese village pavilion, the air thick with clove smoke and distant gong hums. Someone's stirring a pot of ginger tea beside you, and fireflies blink like nature's nervous stagehands. There's a lantern, low and flickering, behind what looks like the hide of a very unlucky buffalo, and suddenly, the show begins. Tiny figures, sharp, angular, impossibly detailed, casted their long shadows against the cloth. A prince bows. A demon growls. A tree sprouts out of nowhere, and then just as suddenly vanishes. The puppets are silent, but the shadows, loud, hypnotic, haunting. You could almost swear they breathe. Just don't blink too fast. You might miss something. You probably won't survive this as a PowerPoint presentation, but as a midnight lullaby. You're in for something bizarrely beautiful. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious how late is too late for sleepy history. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward on the woven mat as a deep gong signals the beginning. The puppet master, or dalang as they call him, sits cross-legged like a spider at the center of a web. His hands flick faster than your eyes can follow, and every tiny leather silhouette flutters with personality. But these aren't your average bedtime puppets. They don't tell cheerful little stories about sleepy bears or counting sheep. Number these ones. They hurl spears and make gods cry. The first shadows you meet are warriors from the Mahabharata, that sprawling Indian epic that somehow got adopted, Javanized, and transformed into an infinite storytelling machine. Arjuna, the graceful archer, flickers across the screen. Then Bhima, the strong but sensitive type with questionable hair decisions. They battle demons, consult sages, flirt with princesses, and every line is perfectly timed to a metallophone's dreamy ping. You don't need to speak the old Javanese language to get the point. The rise and fall of tone, the gasp of the crowd, the occasional chuckle, it all washes over you like a lullaby with sword fights. Historians still argue whether wayang kulit began as spiritual ritual or public entertainment, but everyone agrees on one thing. It was always performed at night. That was the deal. No exceptions. The darkness wasn't just convenient, it was essential. Shadow puppetry needs light to cast illusions, sure, but also silence, stillness, the kind that only descends after dinner when even the chickens have called it quits. And speaking of chickens, you notice one wandering around behind the screen. The dalang doesn't miss a beat. With a single jab of a puppet, he makes the rooster a part of the story. That's showbiz, baby. The screen is usually made of cotton, stretched taut and yellowed with years of oil smoke. Behind it, a single flickering lamp, sometimes powered by coconut oil, sometimes a small electric bulb if we're talking post-1980s. But let's keep it romantic, yeah? Let's say tonight's light comes from a real open flame, soft and golden, casting long shadows like memories you haven't had yet. The puppet figures themselves are miniature works of insanity. Crafted from water buffalo hide, they're carved with impossible detail and painted in metallic colors that the audience will never see. Seriously. The people on the other side of the screen only get shadows. But the front-facing puppets are glittering, dazzling, like runway models who only ever perform in silhouette. It's kind of tragic, like decorating your socks. Still, each puppet can take weeks to carve. Artisans trace patterns passed down for generations. Some families even inherit templates are locked away like sacred recipes. Want to create a demon? Better have 6 arms, a gnarly grin, and the jawline of someone who's never skipped leg day. Holy man? Look for bulging eyes and a cone-shaped hat. Princess? Always with that graceful swan neck curve. Even the shape of a puppet's nose says something. Long curved noses mean noble birth. Flat noses? Villains. Real subtle, guys. But you're not judging. You're halfway to a sleep already, lulled by the rhythmic tapping of the Dalang's wooden mallet, his cue to the musicians, and the increasingly hypnotic swirl of shadows. This isn't just a show, it's a trance. According to one fringe theory you heard once, probably while standing too close to a guy who owned crystals, the original purpose of wayang kulit was to guide souls into dream states, a form of ancient lucid dreaming induction. Could be nonsense, could be genius. Historians still argue whether there's any psychological truth to it, or if audiences were just bored and sleepy. Either way, it works. You start to notice how the Dalang paces his story like a lullaby. There's action, sure. A war here, a monster there. But it always flows back to something softer. A bit of singing, a sudden joke, a whispering wind effect made by blowing across a flute. The puppet of a tree starts swaying back and forth for no reason other than to soothe your eyeballs. One section of the tale features a puppet buffalo that keeps interrupting a prince's speech by mooing, loudly and inaccurately. The audience, mostly kids and toothless elders, loses it. Apparently, this gag has been used since at least the 18th century. Still lands. You lie back on your mat, arms behind your head, eyes half closed as the Dalang changes voice to an old king bickering with a talking banana. You don't get it, doesn't matter, it's hilarious. The night stretches long. You lose all sense of time. One story melts into the next, like when you watch too many TikToks and forget your name. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crows. Not the puppet one, a real one. But the Dalang doesn't stop. He never stops. These shows are known to go from sunset to sunrise, with the same guy talking, singing, voicing 40 different characters and drumming with his foot. All night long. You should feel sorry for him, but honestly, he looks fine. Like a monk possessed by the spirits of 10 Broadway actors and 2 improv comedians. This is his thing. And you? You're just a sleepy passenger, being ferried through myth and music, wrapped in a blanket of flickering shadows and the faint scent of sandalwood. There's something sacred about it. Something almost alive. And with that, another puppet steps onto the screen. Head bowed, arms extended, ready to take you deeper into the tale. The new puppet on the screen glides forward with that slow, stylized grace you're already starting to recognize. Long arms curved like vines, feet in a tiptoe that never quite touches the ground. This one's no warrior. She's a storyteller, a Dalang perempuan, a female Dalang, which wasn't always common, but was never entirely absent either. Some fringe accounts say female Dalangs were sought after in certain central Javanese courts, especially when the story required a softer voice or a more emotional edge. Historians still argue whether these women were truly respected artists or just tolerated exceptions. But tonight, she's front and center in shadow, and you watch as she begins spinning the tale of Dewi Shri, the rice goddess. Every time she speaks, the crowd hushes just a little deeper, as if even the insects are holding their breath. Her voice drifts over the gamelan notes like fog curling through the trees. Dewi Shri, she explains, was born from the tears of a god who wept too hard for the brokenness of the world. She sprouted from the soil, fully formed, bearing rice in her arms and dreams in her eyes. According to some tellings, her breath created the monsoon winds. Her sighs stirred the ocean. Her footsteps softened the earth, so seeds could settle. You don't remember learning about any of this in school. But here, on this island, beneath this sagging roof full of shadows and half-remembered dreams, she feels as real as gravity. The puppet of Dewi Shri is stunning. Painted gold, etched in leaf patterns, her nose delicately curved like a comma in a love letter. Even though you're watching from the wrong side of the screen, you can still feel the energy. The audience, mostly women and kids now curled under shawls or stretched out on banana mats, murmurs softly. One woman makes a gesture toward the puppet, fingers to lips, then forehead, then chest. Not quite a prayer, but definitely something more than applause. The story unfolds in layers. Dewi Shri falls in love with a mortal man, a humble farmer who can't believe his luck. But their love is doomed, naturally. She has to choose between staying with him and keeping the rice growing for the rest of the world. Bit of a high-stakes breakup. She weeps, vanishes into the soil, and from her body springs the first rice harvest. Everyone eats. No one is happy. You sigh. Classic myth heartbreak. The Dalang's voice shifts gears without warning. Suddenly, she's voicing a greedy landlord, then a sneaky monkey, then a chorus of squabbling mice. You have no idea how she does it. If she ever had vocal nodules, she must have bartered them away for magical stamina. The gamelan orchestra plays gently in the background, gongs, metallophones, drums, bamboo flutes, forming a shimmering soundscape that's less about melody and more about atmosphere. You can't hum it later, but you'll remember how it made your skin prickle. And now, you notice how sound and shadow are inseparable here. When Dewi Shri cries, a soft chime plays. When the villain cackles, the drums rattle like distant thunder. Every emotional cue is underlined with musical punctuation, and even though no one's speaking your language, you understand everything. You shift slightly, and the mat beneath you squeaks. A kid nearby gives you a sleepy glare, like you just ruined her dream. You mouth sorry, but she's already rolled back into her mom's side. The story deepens. The rice goddess is reincarnated again and again, each time returning to save humanity from its own stupidity. The Dalang seems to be suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the cycle never ends. Maybe Dewi Shri is still out there, disguised as an old woman you ignored at the market, or the stranger who helped you find your lost phone. Probably not your actual rice cooker, but hey, who's to say? This idea, that myth and modern life overlap, is one of the secrets behind wayang's staying power. It's not just a show, it's a ritual, a form of teaching, a community sleepover with divine subtext. One puppet appears looking suspiciously like a Dutch colonial officer. That nose? That powdered wig? Yeah, subtle. The crowd chuckles knowingly. Apparently, even ancient shadow puppetry found time to roast the colonizers. You give a silent fist bump of approval. Of course, the Dutch weren't the only ones to misunderstand the puppets. During certain colonial periods, wayang shows were banned or censored. Some stories were declared too mystical or subversive. Which is ironic, because to the locals, The shadow plays were practically bedtime prayers. Removing them was like banning lullabies because they might cause rebellious dreams. Historians still argue whether wayang kulit was a coded form of resistance or just a stubborn cultural habit. Either way, it survived. Passed down from father to son, from teacher to student, from one blinking oil lamp to another, even during blackouts, even in exile. Back in the performance, the dalang shifts again, this time telling a side story about a crocodile who wants to learn how to farm rice. It's a comedy. The crocodile can't use a hoe, keeps eating the neighbors and accidentally floods the field. Eventually, he gives up and opens a tofu stall instead. Again, the audience is in stitches. You're impressed. Nothing like existential farm failure to get a laugh in the middle of the night. But there's a tenderness underneath all this, a quiet awe. Even when the jokes fly, the message is clear. Stories are sacred. The past is present. And shadows are where truths hide their most dazzling forms. You lean your head back, letting your eyelids droop just a little as the music softens into the kind of rhythm that almost matches your heartbeat. Someone walks by offering a tray of sweet rice cakes. You decline with a whisper, not because you're not hungry, just because you don't want to miss even a flicker of the screen. Dewi Shree's puppet returns one last time, rising like mist out of the stage floor. She offers a final blessing, arms wide, voice like water, and the screen glows a little brighter. Then the light dims. The shadow vanishes. You're not sure if the story's over or just catching its breath. The dalang takes a sip of water, rolls her shoulders, and without pause, picks up another puppet. This time, a soldier with legs like tree trunks and an expression like he's been waiting 300 years to speak. He clears his throat. The story continues. The soldier puppet lifts his arms like he's shouldering 1,000 regrets. And before his mouth opens, you already know this won't be a cheerful tale. His limbs twitch in deliberate, jagged moves, and you catch the flicker of metallic red paint on his breastplate. He's Prince Varkudara, known more famously as Bhima, one of the 5 Pandava brothers from the Mahabharata, the ancient Indian epic that somehow made its way across oceans and centuries to find a second home in Java. The dalang shifts tone. Her voice drops into a low, rumbling pitch, like the distant cracking of storm clouds over rice paddies. You recognize this as the start of a Laikan Parang, a war story. Not just any war. This one's the Battle of Kurukshetra. It's bedtime, sure, but apparently it's also the time to revisit a cosmic conflict that leveled dynasties and nearly shattered the heavens. And yes, this part always makes the kids sit up. War scenes in wayang aren't the booming pyrotechnic affairs of modern action films. They're oddly quiet, intimate, all about posture, voice modulation, and the hypnotic rhythm of the gamelan's deep bronze gongs. A puppet twitches its hand. That's a sword strike. A head tilts slightly. A kingdom falls. You feel your own breathing slow as Bhima prepares to face his nemesis, the invincible Duryodhana. The 2 warriors square off, and even from your side of the screen, it feels like watching gods shadow box behind a veil. Historians still argue whether Javanese adaptations of Indian epics were religious teachings, political allegories, or just really compelling soap operas with divine weaponry. What's certain is that by the time they landed in Java, these stories had mutated beautifully. Bhima here is no longer just a demigod warrior. He's a spiritual seeker, a protector of peasants, and sometimes, weirdly, a rice farmer with a fondness for grilled tempeh. And yes, there are alternate versions where Pima gets relationship advice from forest spirits and spends an entire act debating the ethics of punching someone in the soul. You won't find that in the original Sanskrit. The puppet duel intensifies. Bhima's movements grow sharper. He takes down Duryodhana with a symbolic blow to the thigh. In some wayang versions, the villain's puppet is sliced so cleanly it seems to dissolve in the lamplight. But no blood. Just silence, and then a gong that seems to say, "It is done." The gamelan fades. You feel a chill, not from fear, more like awe. This isn't just a story. It's a spell being slowly unwound. A teenage boy next to you nods approvingly, whispering something to his little brother about how Bhima is his favorite because he doesn't talk much but always wins. The brother yawns and curls into his lap. And then, the dalang begins the interlude. It's called Gara Gara, and it's the part every kid loves. From the box of puppets, out comes Samar, a short, pudgy figure with wide eyes, a bulbous nose, and an eternal expression of being mildly disappointed with the universe. He's the clown, the servant, the divine trickster who farts during royal ceremonies and dispenses wisdom while adjusting his waistband. And yes, according to some fringe folklore, he's actually a god who chose to disguise himself as a humble villager out of cosmic boredom. He waddles into view, accompanied by his 3 sons, Gareng, Petruk, and Bagon, all equally absurd-looking and wildly beloved. One limps. One is lanky with a nose like a gourd. One looks like he was drawn by a sleep-deprived toddler. But together, comic gold. Samar mutters about the price of tofu, the overgrown weeds behind the palace, and how he'd rather be home watching his ducks than dealing with royal nonsense. The crowd giggles. Kids lean forward. Even the old men in the back crack smiles. But then, just when you think this is all fluff, Samar turns to the audience, sighs deeply, and delivers a monologue about the nature of destiny, about how even puppets must follow the shape carved into them. But maybe, just maybe, a little wobble in the wrist can change the entire ending. You blink, dang. Historians still argue whether Samar was inserted into these epics as a political protest figure or as comic relief. Maybe both. Either way, he's the only character allowed to criticize kings, question gods, and still get invited to the after-party. Talk about job security. The interlude blends back into the narrative. Bhima reappears. He's limping now, emotional, if not literal, carrying a broken spear and the weight of his choices. He seeks Samar's counsel. What follows is a philosophical exchange you definitely didn't expect from a bedtime story. Samar warns him that revenge satisfies the mouth, but leaves the soul starving. Bhima responds by pointing at his puppet heart. A literal gesture. The crowd groans in laughter. Then Samar hands him a ladle. Not a sword, a ladle. Because, as he explains, peace starts in the kitchen. Okay, that one gets a round of applause. The story drifts on, softer now. Bhima walks into the forest. His shadow merges with the trees on the screen, then fades completely. He's gone. Off to seek a hermit. Or maybe start a food cart. Again, depends on the version. You stretch your legs. Someone nearby hums along with the gamelan. A breeze slips through the open window, carrying the scent of wood smoke and wet soil. You breathe it in. And then, almost casually, the dalang shifts again. This time into a story about a king who can only fall asleep if a puppet whispers riddles into his ear. You scoot forward just a little, because the next part feels like it's meant for you. The king reclines against a mound of bolsters, crowned but barefoot, robes, trailing over the floor like spilled moonlight. His eyes are wide open. That's the problem. They've been that way for days, nights too. His name is Prabhu Jayaningrat, and he hasn't slept since the eclipse. You shift slightly, the mat beneath you creaking, as the Dalang's voice softens. The king isn't cursed exactly. He's just overthought himself into chronic insomnia. Happens to the best of us. Apparently, he made the mistake of peeking behind the royal curtain of fate, consulted the wrong sage, and heard something he shouldn't have. That dreams are not escapes, but doors. And some doors open the wrong way. So now he paces every night, toes cold, whispering to his pet rooster for company. He's tried lullabies, warm milk, chanting monks, even counting royal taxes backward. Nothing works. Until he hears about a village where the Dalang tell stories so soothing, even rocks start snoring halfway through. And here's the twist. The Dalang refuses to perform in person. She only sends her puppets. They arrive packed inside a bamboo basket, carried on the back of a boy no older than 12, who says nothing except, "She sends sleep." Historians still argue whether this tale was a real tradition or just an allegory for therapy before therapists were invented. But the record shows that in ancient Javanese courts, Dalangs were sometimes invited, not for ceremonies, but for personal healing rituals. Sleep being a sacred gift, and stories the thread that stitched it back together. The king agrees. He clears his court. A single oil lamp is lit, and the puppets begin. The first puppet to speak isn't human. It's a monkey. Lips puckered, tail swishing like a metronome. His name is Lundu, and he speaks in riddles. What lies in the mouth but speaks through the eyes? The king furrows his brow. Tears, he murmurs. Lundu chuckles. Close, but wrong. And vanishes in a puff of poetic injustice. Then comes a deer, nervous and regal, who tells a tale of losing her shadow after telling too many lies. Followed by a baby elephant who speaks backwards. And then, your favorite, a giant snail who insists he used to be a cloud until he fell in love with gravity. The puppets parade across the screen, not telling a story so much as weaving a dream. The gamelan changes tempo. The saren's tinkling notes roll in waves, like water flicked from silver bowls. The king starts to blink slower. A servant notes this in a scroll. Historical accuracy matters, even when your monarch is halfway between consciousness and puppet-induced trance. And then the puppet that changes everything arrives. She's small, not more than a palm's height, made of pale leather, intricately painted. A little girl with a golden crown and a lantern in her hand. Her name is Nyai Lintang. She walks across the screen and says only this: "Let me tell you the story of the stars you swallowed." The entire palace reportedly paused. Even the rooster fell silent. Yes, the rooster is still there. He has plot relevance later. Nyai Lintang explains that the king once swallowed stars as a child. Not on purpose, of course, but he wanted to keep the sky close. Every night, he took one star and tucked it under his tongue, thinking it would help him shine from the inside. Now, as an adult, all those stars are trapped in his throat, buzzing like secrets with nowhere to go. No wonder he can't sleep. You kind of love this. It's nonsense, obviously, but it makes poetic sense, which might be more important. The king, in his dreamy haze, asks, "How do I let them out?" Nyai Lintang lifts her lantern. "You dream. That's the only way out is through." The oil lamp sputters. The gamelan softens until it's barely audible, like a breeze rustling rice stalks at dawn. The king exhales, and this time the breath drags. His shoulders fall, his eyes finally close, and in the puppet's hand, the lantern glows brighter. The first dream is beginning. Now here's the kicker. Some versions of this lay can end there. Others continue through the king's dreamscape, which involves a debate between his left shoe and a wandering ghost who sells mangoes. But in the oldest scripts, it's noted that the real climax is silence, just sleep, and maybe a snore or two. Scholars have tried to categorize this genre, not quite myth, not quite fable. One researcher even coined the term shadow therapy theatre. It didn't catch on, but the idea stuck. You watch as the puppets are gently removed from the screen, one by one. No curtain call, just absence. As if they were never there. Just your imagination filling in silhouettes on cotton, stretched tight across a bamboo frame. In the distance, a rooster crows. No, seriously. The darling throws her voice perfectly, and the puppet rooster perks up in salute. It's the show's final bow. You blink back into the present. That story was more calming than you expected. Odd. Unfolding like smoke through your thoughts. But it's done now. Except you still hear the faint jingle of a bell. You glance at the puppet box on stage. A piece of carved leather peeks out, almost like it's watching you back. Maybe it's Nyai. Or maybe you're just very, very tired. The bell's soft jingle fades, but it leaves behind a shimmer in the air, like someone just whispered directly into your ear and vanished before you could turn your head. You're not sure whether the sound came from the stage or inside your own skull, which, let's face it, is pretty on brand for a story session like this. You're still sitting there, half melted into the mat, watching the dalang's shadow slowly coil back behind the linen screen. She hasn't moved in a while. Or maybe you just blinked too slow. A distant rustle, then a change in the lighting, barely perceptible, as if dusk and dawn momentarily switched dance partners. The screen flickers again, and just when you think the tale has ended, another silhouette appears. Not a puppet this time. A box, a puppet trunk, or, in proper Javanese, kotak wayang, made of teak wood, worn smooth by decades of sweaty hands and frantic packing. You lean forward. From the box, a voice rises. Not the dalang's voice. This one is younger, faster, like someone trying to tell you something before they forget it. The puppet box is speaking. Or maybe someone inside it is. And this is where it gets delightfully weird. The box tells a story of the puppet maker. Not the dalang, mind you, but the person who carves, stretches, paints, and pins. A forgotten artisan named Pak Mulyadi, who, legend says, could carve dreams directly into leather, quite literally. According to one folktale, Mulyadi once made a puppet so imbued with longing that it refused to stay in the box. It would crawl out at night and sit by his window, staring up at the stars, sighing in a way that made the wind shiver. Historians still argue whether Mulyadi was a single person, a composite figure, or just a handy metaphor for the creative process. But references to a solitary puppet maker with moon-colored fingers do appear across multiple scrolls from different centuries. So who knows? What's less up for debate is the craftsmanship involved in a wayang kulit puppet. It's meticulous, almost meditative. You picture it, a thin piece of buffalo hide, soaked until pliable, then dried into a stiff, translucent sheet. The artisan leans close, blade in hand, and begins. Not drawing, cutting. Every eyelash, every crown jewel, every muscle curve is punched through with obsessive, almost spiritual precision. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of pinprick holes later, the design emerges. And then comes the painting. Traditional colours only. Gold, crimson, soot black, royal blue. Faces painted in profile. Always. Characters are identified not by realism, but by posture, ornamentation, and the angle of their eyebrows. Oh, and their noses. Big deal, noses. A hooked nose might mean cunning. A flat one, humility. An absurdly long one. Usually the comic relief, like Semar, the divine clown with body proportions that suggest gravity took the day off. You hear a chuckle from the mat next to you. Or maybe it's your own. Back to the puppet box. Inside, the puppets aren't stored randomly. Each one is slotted into a strict hierarchy. Gods and nobles get the honor of resting upright. Demons and tricksters are tucked in sideways like afterthoughts. The heroes, they sit in the middle, of course. Close enough to both ends to choose their path. This storage method isn't just practical, it's cosmological. A portable universe made of leather and string. In old villages, children used to peek inside the puppet trunk before a performance and whisper predictions about which puppet would come out first. Some believed the order of their appearance foretold the next harvest, or whether someone's cow would finally give birth. One kid famously burst into tears because the first puppet was the villainous Rowana, which apparently meant a week of toothaches. Spoiler, he was right. You lie back and think about that. A box that holds fate. Like if your Netflix queue judged you back, but with more ancestral energy and less algorithm. The darling finally shifts. She pulls a puppet from the box, and this time it's someone you've seen before. The little girl with the lantern. Nyai Lintang makes a return. Her arm is raised, as if she's beckoning you closer. She begins another tale, this one softer, gentler, about the night wind who fell in love with the moon's reflection. They could never meet, of course. One was always moving, the other only ever shimmered on the surface of things. It's all very poetic and slightly tragic, but the way she tells it, her high fluttery voice, the rustle of her cut-out feet against the screen, it's oddly reassuring, like she's not sad about the love story, just aware that some things only exist when you close your eyes. You are reminded of that thing your grandmother used to say. Some stories aren't told to be remembered, they're told to be dreamed. The gamelan music returns. This time, the rhythm mimics breathing, slow, steady, circular. The saron chimes like the ticking of an ancient heart. You glance again at the puppet box. It seems quieter now, like it's sleeping. There's an old fringe belief among Javanese spiritualists that puppets aren't truly inanimate, that each one holds a sliver of soul, not a full one, just a whisper. Enough to remember its last role, or dream its next one. This idea freaked colonial anthropologists out, by the way. One of them reportedly refused to touch a puppet after watching a show, claiming it smiled at him with too many teeth. That guy later became a beetle collector. So, make of that what you will. You pull your shawl tighter, the evening breeze cooling your cheeks. On stage, the puppets dim. The screen fades to grey. No drama, no grand finale. Just Nyai Lintang, lantern dimming, saying, "Tomorrow, we'll open the box again." You nod, even if you're not sure she can see you. And just like that, the lid closes. The dreams go back into storage. But not all the way. Never all the way. Some of them stay with you. You're still on the mat. Not really sure how long it's been, but your back is beginning to mold itself into the pattern of the woven floor, and your brain is half convinced you're floating, which honestly isn't a bad place to be, especially considering what's next. Because As the last breath of gamelan fades into the earth, something strange begins to unfold. The shadows don't vanish this time. They drift. Like smoke curling out of incense, they slip off the screen, wander across the floor, and stretch across the ceiling like they've decided the performance isn't over. You blink slowly. Maybe this is part of the show. Maybe it's your brain shutting down for the night. Both seem plausible. And then you hear it. A low, rhythmic chant. Not sung exactly. Not spoken either. It's the sulukan. A kind of vocal incantation used by the dalang to weave transitions between scenes. You don't understand the words, but the cadence settles over you like soft moss. In old Java, they say these chants aren't just artistic filler. They're spells. Light ones. Nothing too spicy. Just enough to invite the ancestors to sit in, adjust the mood, maybe keep the rain away. Historians still argue whether sulukan have pre-Hindu origins, possibly linked to pre-Islamic animist rituals. Others claim they evolved purely within the courtly shadow play tradition. You just know your eyelids are getting heavy every time the dalang hums a downward phrase. Now the puppets don't move at all. They just hover in place, as if the air is holding them up by memory alone. One in particular catches your eye. Not Nyai Lintang this time, but a skinny character with oversized ears and a cheeky grin. Petruk, a clown servant figure, but not as foolish as he looks. Petruk is one of the Punakawan, the quartet of comedic sidekicks who appear in nearly every shadow play. Their job? Mock the heroes, speak truth to kings, and toss in the occasional fart joke. Yes, seriously, Punakawan are not gods, nor nobles, nor demons. They're ordinary Javanese villagers inserted into mythic tales as the voice of the people. And while they often get the biggest laughs, they're also the ones who deliver quiet wisdom when everyone else is busy posturing. The most famous among them, Samar, looks like your uncle if he swallowed a beach ball and gave up on pants. But don't let the looks fool you. Samar is divine. Some say he's the guardian spirit of Java itself, cursed to appear in clown form to remind mortals that even the sacred can be silly. Tonight, Petruk takes the lead. His shadow hops across the screen, making wisecracks in a nasally falsetto. The audience chuckles softly. You smile too, though you're not sure why. There's just something comforting about a puppet with terrible posture and excellent comedic timing. And then Petruk turns serious. His voice drops an octave. Still nasal, but now he's telling a bedtime story to a shadow child. It's a tale within a tale. Very Inception. But with buffalo leather and fewer exploding elevators. He speaks of a child who couldn't sleep because he feared the dark. The stars blinked too fast. The trees whispered secrets. And even the moon looked like it was plotting something. So the child ran away. First to the river, then to the rice fields, then deep into the shadow realm. In the realm, everything is reversed. The sun sets before it rises. Roosters crow at midnight. Bamboo grows upside down. And shadows don't follow you, they lead. There, the boy meets a sleepy tiger who teaches him how to close his eyes without fear. The trick, the tiger says, is to let the darkness in, but not all the way. Just enough to paint dreams on. Like a screen. Like the one you're watching now. The boy returns home, still afraid, but also curious. He lies down, stares at the ceiling, and waits for his dreams to find him. They do. Eventually. The puppet lingers a moment longer on screen. Just a silhouette of a child with eyes half closed. Then, with a little hop, Petruk leaves the screen. The chant resumes. A soft pulse beneath your ribs. Here's the quirky bit. Some traditionalists believe Punakawan are not scripted. that they improvise, that the dalang doesn't so much control them as channel them. Like they already exist in the ether, waiting for someone to pick up the strings. There's even a fringe theory that Seymour is actually a time-traveling philosopher, caught in a reincarnation loop until humanity learns to laugh at itself. Bit of a stretch, but honestly not the wildest thing you've heard tonight. Another puppet takes the stage. This time, it's a Rakshasa demon with 10 arms and no chill. He flails, roars, stomps. Classic big bad energy. But every time he strikes a pose, a Punakawan sneaks behind him and mimics it, exaggerated and ridiculous. One time, the shadow clown even sticks out a cutout tongue. You snort, quietly, but still. That's the rhythm of wayang bedtime stories. Divine grandeur undercut by sly, earthy humor. High drama meets shadowy sass. And then, suddenly there's a breeze. You turn, half expecting someone to be fanning the room. But it's just the air shifting. Natural, probably. Or spiritual, possibly. Either way, the screen flickers slightly. A tiny moment of chaos in a sea of control. The darling clears her throat. A new voice emerges. Not hers. One of the puppets again. This one's soft, slow, telling you that sleep isn't the enemy. It's just the shadow's cousin, and all you have to do is follow them both home. You let that settle. Remember that moment earlier? The box, the puppets waiting like dreams in rows. Yeah, it's still in your mind. Still breathing gently behind your thoughts. And now you're thinking, maybe sleep isn't something you fall into. Maybe it's something you enter, stage left, under a screen of flickering lantern light, with a wisecracking puppet in tow, and a tiger napping by the wings. The chant ends, the shadows go still, and you, with eyes half open, drift further into the tale. The story continues, but your thoughts for now are content to watch from the wings. The hush after Patrick's tale feels thicker somehow, as if the very air is wrapped in gauze. You blink slowly once, twice, and for a heartbeat, you're not entirely sure where you are. Not because you're lost, but because your body is just that relaxed. Like someone hit pause on the world and you're floating mid-scene. A soft creak draws your attention back to the screen. A new puppet glides into view. This one is tall, regal, a silhouette of elegance. You recognize her by the gentle curve of her profile. Sinta, the beloved of Rama, heroine of many a Javanese retelling of the Ramayana. Her figure is carved with exquisite delicacy. Hair in high knots, hands poised mid-dance, eyes forever cast downward in quiet strength. The wayang version of the Ramayana isn't a straight lift from the Indian epic. It's evolved, localized. In the Javanese version, Sinta isn't just a damsel in distress. She's a moral compass, a spiritual force. She sleeps not out of helplessness, but as a meditation. Her dreams, they're rumored to predict the outcomes of wars. Historians still argue whether this elevation of female characters in Javanese wayang reflects older matrilineal influences, or if it was a conscious artistic rebellion against patriarchal norms. Either way, here, women aren't footnotes. They're shadow architects. Sinta kneels. A hush settles, and slowly, ever so slowly, she begins to speak. Not to another character, but directly to the audience, to you. She tells a lullaby. Not sung, just whispered. The Javanese version of a night prayer. Her words aren't translated, but the rhythm carries. You hear terms like leleyu, a word for soft sleep, peaceful and free of disturbance. Her voice is a breeze between rice stalks. Her arms move gently, her shadow swaying as if caught in slow water. In old Javanese villages, stories like this were told under banyan trees. Everyone gathered on mats, fireflies blinking approval, elders nodding at every subtle inflection. You'd lean against your cousin, maybe snack on roasted peanuts, and let the narrative ooze into your bones. Sleep didn't need to be chased. It showed up on its own. Here's the quirky detail. In some performances, if a child fell asleep during Sinta's monologue, the Dalang would pause and softly adjust the tale, weaving in the kid's name. Like, and little Dato, curled beside the mango tree, dreamt of flying horses. It was part story, part lullaby, part magic trick. And if Dato woke up the next morning saying he did dream of flying horses, well, no one questioned it. Tonight, Sinta's lullaby drifts into a monologue about longing. She speaks of a garden she saw once, where the moon brushed against the tips of banana leaves and all the flowers grew upside down. She couldn't tell if it was a dream or a memory, but it made her calm, made her sleep, even in exile, even when the forest howled. You listen to this tale, and suddenly your mattress back home doesn't seem so essential. Maybe you could sleep on a rattan mat, or in a wooden pavilion, or honestly, anywhere this voice goes. And then, a shift. Another puppet enters. A giant this time, possibly Kumbhakarna, the tragic brother of the villain Rahwana. You know, the one who fought valiantly, not for evil, but for loyalty. In some tellings, he's cursed with endless sleep, only waking for battle, a literal sleep warrior. Nap goals. He grunts. His arms wave. The Dalang shifts pitch. Kumbhakarna grumbles that he's tired. Always tired. But fate doesn't care. And the Punakawan return. Semar, Gareng, Bagong, Petruk. They dance around the giant, poking fun at his snoring. Bagong mimics a sleepwalker. Petruk climbs onto the giant's foot and pretends to do Tai Chi. The audience laughs again quietly. You chuckle too, somewhere between a sigh and a hum. And here's where things get layered. In some performances, these clown scenes double as political satire. The Dalang sneaks in jabs about modern issues, hidden under puppet antics. Censorship laws? Just a joke from Petruk. Taxation? Semar's wallet is mysteriously lighter. Scholars still debate how much this subversive humor shaped public discourse in Java's history. But hey, if the emperor's laughing, who's going to stop the puppet? A breeze slips through again. You feel it on your ankles. The screen begins to flicker with torchlight. The shadows now sway, not from motion, but from dancing fire. The oil in the lamps must be running low. Or maybe this is deliberate. A kind of visual dimming. The puppets move slower. The music softens to single notes, spaced far apart. You hear the gong, just once, deep, like the sound of a temple door closing. And then Sinta steps forward again. Her silhouette glides, almost glows, and in a voice quieter than before. She says she's going to rest now, that the tale will continue without her, but her dreams will linger. She turns, walks toward the edge of the screen, and vanishes. Just like that. The screen goes still. No music. No voices. Just the sound of the wind brushing palm leaves and your own heartbeat, loud in your ears. Someone adjusts a lamp. The shadows warp, and now a new puppet appears. Tiny, childlike, blank-eyed. A dream spirit. No name, just drifting. Carved from translucent hide, thinner than the rest. So thin, you can almost see the screen through it. It doesn't speak, just floats. And somehow you know, it's here to collect all the stories, yours included. Your breathing slows, your arms go heavy. Your thoughts soften at the edges, like they've been gently eroded by the sound of distant gongs. The dalang hums one last sulukan, barely audible, just enough to mark the passage from tale to dream. And you, half shadow yourself now, wait for the next whisper. Eyes soft, mind open, body still. You barely notice the transition. The last notes of the sulukan dissolve into the night air, and yet the screen has already shifted again. This time the shadows are a little sharper, the movement slower. The torchlight behind the screen burns steady now, less flicker, more glow. Like the dalang knew you needed this moment to settle, not stir. The puppet center stage is unfamiliar at first. Not a hero, not a clown, not even a noble warrior. No, this is something else entirely. A tree. Yes, a tree puppet. Tall, with dozens of intricate branches, each etched so delicately into the leather that you imagine the artisan must have gone half blind making it. The leaves sway gently, thanks to the dalang's clever manipulations, and small carved birds perch at its ends. This isn't just scenery, it's a character. And tonight, it's going to tell a story. Trees talk in Javanese shadow, puppet theatre. Not often, and not loudly. But when they do, it matters. This one, apparently, has been watching for centuries. Think of it like the neighborhood grandma who's seen everything, and doesn't mind letting you know. The tree's voice is deep and slow, practically molasses. It rumbles like an old drum, and it speaks of dreams. Not just regular sleep dreams, prophetic ones. Those hazy, surreal visions that ancient Javanese believed arrived from gods, ancestors, or spirits stuck between worlds. The kind you were supposed to write down, interpret, and, if you were lucky, act on before breakfast. You learn that in old Java, some dalangs would dream entire performances before scripting them. The story didn't come from their head. It came while they slept. Then they'd wake up, sketch new puppets, carve them by hand, and debut them that same week. Some communities believed that if a dream was especially vivid, the spirits themselves had commissioned the show. Historians still argue whether these claims were sincere spirituality or just good marketing, but you know what? You're too comfortable to care. The tree goes quiet, and another puppet enters, small, hunched, wearing a scholar's cap. This is Abdi Wikara, the servant of speech, a character that appears only in rare, philosophical wayang plays. You watch him shuffle across the screen, arms behind his back, mumbling to himself about memory and time and the trick of staying awake too long. He kneels beside the tree and begins to debate it. Yes, debate. He asks if dreams are trustworthy. The tree says nothing is trustworthy, not even your own thoughts. Abdi counters that sometimes dreams are all we have. That memory is nothing but a shadow that lingers longer than expected. They go back and forth like this for minutes. No dramatic action, no battles, just two carved figures, arguing under torchlight about whether sleep is real. In modern terms, you might call it a philosophical podcast, but one told by leather silhouettes and ancient gongs. The audience around you doesn't shift. They're still. No yawns, no whispers. Because this part, while quiet, is considered sacred. It's the meditative midpoint of the show, the eye of the narrative storm. And it's when you're most likely to nod off. That's not a design flaw. That's the goal. You remember now. The wayang kulit wasn't just entertainment. It was meant to guide the rhythm of the night. Performances often started at dusk and went until dawn. Not because people had that much energy, but because the show was meant to mirror a dream. Beginning with clarity, descending into confusion, wading through moral dilemmas and cosmic jokes, and ending in resolution, or something close enough. You weren't meant to stay awake for all of it. Falling asleep during a wayang wasn't rude. It was spiritual alignment, like saying, "Thanks, I've seen enough. I trust the rest." And here's the quirky detail. In some villages, people would bring pillows, lay flat on the ground in front of the screen and sleep right there, the shadows flickering across their closed eyelids. They believed the stories would still reach them, seep into their dreams, rearrange their thoughts, even heal ailments of the spirit. A kind of subconscious Netflix binge, centuries before Wi-Fi. Back on screen, Abdiwikara pulls out a scroll and begins listing all the dreams he's had. Some make sense. Flying, dancing, visiting the dead. Others are pure chaos. A dragon made of wind, a buffalo playing chess, a volcano that sneezes mangoes. Petruk reappears, naturally, to interpret the dreams. Completely wrong, of course. He insists that the mango-sneezing volcano means someone's stealing chickens in the next village. The crowd laughs. You smile with them, because at this point, the absurdity is welcome. It's a kind of release. Then the dalang shifts tone. The gong slow. A wooden flute whispers from somewhere off stage. Abdiwikara asks the tree a final question. Why do we dream of stories we've never lived? The tree finally answers. Because your soul remembers things your body forgot. The screen dims a little. You're not sure if it's the torch or your eyes, but everything feels quieter, even the shadows. From this point forward, the performance doesn't aim to energize, it aims to unravel. You're meant to come undone, like a knot loosening in your chest, like a breeze sighing through your ribs. And as the flute fades and the screen rests in silence, you realize something very simple, very ancient, and weirdly specific. You too are a shadow right now, flickering on a screen, tethered by light, released by darkness. And there's still more night to come. Then the dalang shifts tone, the gong slow. A wooden flute whispers from somewhere off stage. Abdiwikara asks the tree a final question. Why do we dream of stories we've never lived? The tree finally answers. Because your soul remembers things your body forgot. The screen dims a little. You're not sure if it's the torch or your eyes, but everything feels quieter. Even the shadows. From this point forward, the performance doesn't aim to energize, it aims to unravel. You're meant to come undone, like a knot loosening in your chest, like a breeze sighing through your ribs. And as the flute fades and the screen rests in silence, you realize something very simple, very ancient, and weirdly specific. You too are a shadow right now, flickering on a screen, tethered by light, released by darkness. And there's still more night to come. The silence on the screen isn't a mistake. It lingers. Lingers the way a dream does, just on the edge of forgetting. You barely hear the crowd around you anymore. Their breathing, once a background rhythm, has faded into the hush. Even the insects in the dark seem to pause. The puppets have stopped moving, but the world hasn't. Not entirely. Then it begins again, slowly. A puppet glides onto the screen, unlike any you've seen so far. Tall, elegant, with arms like branches and a face split down the center. Half serene, half furious. This is Batara Guru, a figure you'll remember because you've already seen versions of him in a dozen other cultures. The spiritual ancestor, the teacher god. A being, equal parts enlightenment and chaos. He enters as though pulled by moonlight. You lean closer without realizing. Everyone does. But Tara Guru doesn't speak yet. He sings. His voice is the Dalang's voice, again, aged, gravel-soft, coming from behind the screen. But now it carries a tune older than language. A lullaby not meant for children, but for the world itself. The words don't matter, it's the sound. Long vowels that stretch like woven silk, consonants that click like bamboo wind chimes. It wraps around you. You've never understood a song more deeply, despite not catching a single syllable. Behind Batara Guru, the screen begins to shift. What was once a flat plane of shadow becomes layered. You see clouds now. Real clouds, sort of. Crafted from thin leather, waved gently with sticks behind the main puppets. Light filters through them in soft wisps. It feels higher up, more ethereal. You've ascended, without standing, without thinking. This is the celestial realm. And in traditional wayang kulit, it's not where stories end. It's where they get complicated. Because up here, even gods have nightmares. You watch as Batara Guru folds in on himself. One arm presses to his chest. The music slows. He's dreaming now, right in front of you, right on screen. Yes, the puppet is dreaming. And what's he dreaming of? A little boy, just a child, holding a wooden puppet, wandering through a dark village, repeating lines he's overheard from grown-ups. Truth must be bent to fit the heart, he says. The brave die first, but never alone. Rice remembers the hands that plant it. The gods in his dream watch him, like they're watching a prophecy unfold. This child becomes the heart of the story for the next few minutes. No name, no kingdom, just a kid and his puppet. The scenes blur together. One moment he's walking along a mountain ridge. The next he's arguing with buffalo, then swimming inside a cloud. None of it follows logic, but it doesn't have to, because it's a shadow play inside a shadow play. A dream inside a dream, and somehow you're inside both. Historians still argue whether this nested storytelling technique was invented by the Javanese or borrowed from earlier Indian and Chinese traditions. But either way, it's brilliant. And baffling, and weirdly hypnotic. You don't try to make sense of it anymore. You're not here for logic. You're here to drift. Here's your quirky detail. Some Dalangs in central Java believe that these celestial dream sequences could predict actual events. If a child puppet cried too long, the rains might not come. If Batara Guru laughed too early, a wedding might fail. Villagers would quietly take mental notes. Adjust plans, move harvests, cancel trips. It wasn't superstition. It was synchronization, living in step with the shadows. Back on screen, the child walks into a forest made of hands. Yes, puppet hands, dozens of them, planted like trees. He ducks and weaves between them, repeating the same phrase again and again. Who tells your story when you sleep? It's eerie, but gentle, like a forgotten part of your brain asking permission to wake up. You see Petruk again, briefly. He's trying to translate the phrase. Fails entirely, of course. He assumes it's a riddle about taxes. Classic Petruk. Then the child exits, and Batara Guru wakes. He doesn't look refreshed. Instead, he seems unsure, like the dream was too big to hold. He looks straight out through the screen, right through you, really, and just stands there, frozen. The Dalang lets this moment hang. It's awkward, but purposeful. You're meant to feel it, the way we sometimes sit on the edge of our bed, dawn creeping in, wondering whether the dream we just had was a message or indigestion. And here's where the wayang magic truly shows itself. Because now, out of the silence, a real voice speaks. Not the Dalang, not the puppets, but an elder from the audience. She steps forward. You can't see her, only hear her, and recites a poem. softly, one verse, about a bird that sings to itself because no one else remembers its song. It isn't planned, but it fits. The whole crowd exhales like a tide retreating. Moments like this aren't rare in traditional wayang. They're invited. Some villagers consider them sacred interruptions, proof that the story is bigger than the screen, that life leaks in. Batara Guru bows, finally, and exits. He leaves the screen not with a flourish, but with a fade, like an old photograph dissolving underwater. And just like that, the celestial layer vanishes. The clouds are pulled away. The music shifts back into a simple drumbeat. But you're not the same anymore. Because somewhere between the puppet's dream and the audience's poem, something opened. You don't know what. Doesn't matter. You just know you'll never look at shadows the same way again. The drumming pulls you back down, steady and slow, like descending a spiral staircase made of sound. You blink, not because you're tired, but because the story just changed altitude again. Gone are the heavens, the dreamy puppet gods, the swirling metaphysical fog. What's on the screen now? A rice field. At night, you hear crickets, you see stars, you smell something, smoky, like wet bamboo being singed at the edge of a fire. The puppets move less now. They walk more than dance. The rhythms of the show have settled, dropped into something quieter, something closer to the world you actually know. This is the kampung phase, the village tales. It's here the dalang brings things back to earth, not because he has to, but because even the most cosmic stories need roots. And nothing grounds a myth faster than farming. You spot the clown servants again. Petruk is squatting next to a puppet cow, chewing something imaginary. Garing is trying to milk a chicken, which does not go well. And Bagong, he's asleep inside a rice sack with his feet sticking out. Of course he is. They banter, they sigh, they complain about taxes, marriages, and ghosts that won't respect personal boundaries. It's hilarious, comforting even. But then the camera shifts, if you can call it that, and you're suddenly watching a boy and a grandmother. Shadow versions of them, anyway. She's holding a baby puppet. He's asking questions. Grandmother, how do stories sleep? She doesn't answer right away. Instead, she moves the baby in slow circles, as if rocking it to sleep. Only when the shadow baby settles does she respond. They curl up inside you, she says. Like cats, like smoke. It's such a simple line, and it hits harder than most punchlines tonight. You glance around. The audience isn't just watching now. They're absorbing. There's something magnetic about this part of the performance. No more gods or kings, just people trying to live and laugh and die in peace. You imagine villagers hundreds of years ago sitting under banana leaf shelters watching the same scene. Same puppets, same lines, same soft ache in the chest. Here's your historical anchor. In traditional Javanese wayang kulit, this segment is often the longest and most personal, while the mythic battles and divine messages might draw the crowd. It's the humble village life that stays with them after the lamps are put out. Many dalangs even improvise whole scenes here, drawing from local gossip or adding inside jokes the audience would instantly recognize. The goal wasn't just storytelling, it was connection. And now, for your quirky gem. During certain full moons, some dalangs use this domestic phase to sneak in agricultural advice. Yup, Puppet Gareng might tell a joke about overwatering rice, which wasn't just funny, it was practical. A shadow puppet as your farming consultant. That's peak multitasking. Tonight, The grandmother is making herbal oil. She's grinding leaves, boiling roots, pouring liquid from a tiny bamboo ladle into a puppet bottle no bigger than a thumb. You realize mid-yawn that she's preparing it for sleep. For the baby, for herself, for the boy. Maybe even for you. The scent of cloves seems to waft from the screen, even though that's clearly impossible. You're tricked, but you like it. That's the secret of shadow puppetry. It never lies, but it always misleads just enough to get you dreaming. Garing interrupts the quiet moment, of course. He bursts in, waving a piece of banana leaf, claiming it's a royal decree from the king that mandates all villagers must now sleep standing up. Petruk reads it upside down, declares it's actually a recipe for spicy duck soup. The baby cries, the boy laughs, the grandmother sighs. You do too. Historians still argue whether the domestic segments of wayang kulit were ever officially scripted, or if they were fully spontaneous zones for community commentary. Some say Dalangs memorized these sequences and passed them down like lullabies. Others insist it was theatre jazz, always riffing, always adjusting. You lean toward the latter, because tonight the rhythm feels alive. Suddenly there's a knock. Not real, on screen. A puppet soldier appears. Thin, tall, ridiculously high cheekbones. He announces, in a voice like a gong wrapped in velvet, that the village is needed. For what? He won't say. But he leaves a scroll behind. The grandmother unrolls it. Her hands tremble. The lighting shifts. Everything gets a little dimmer. Even the screen. You don't see the words, of course. It's a shadow world. Details are implied, not shown. But the music tells you, this isn't good. And just like that, the quiet is gone. In a blink, you're back in motion. The puppets prepare. The villagers gather sacks. Men lift sticks. Children hold hands. The boy looks at his puppet and whispers something. Too soft to catch. But his face says everything. He's ready to leave the village, leave the grandmother, leave sleep. This is the part of the story where most audiences shift in their seats, maybe glance around for a bathroom break or a snack. Not because they're bored, but because they're sad. And sadness makes people fidget. But not you. You stay. You stay because this is where the quiet ends. And in that ending, there's something holy. There's always a moment in wayang kulit, just one, where it stops being a play and becomes something more. Not just shadows, not just leather or lamps or gags about milk chickens, but a mirror. And right now, this soft, slow farewell scene is showing you something you didn't expect to see. Not just a puppet village, but your own little world, your own moments of stillness. The way you talk to yourself when no one's watching. The way you try and fail and try again to sleep. The way stories curl up inside you. Like cats, like smoke. The scroll stays unspoken. No lines are read aloud, but you can hear its contents anyway. That's the magic trick of this moment. It doesn't need dialogue. The silence does all the talking. The villagers pack. Puppets shift in jerky, tender movements, like they're already tired of whatever journey lies ahead. And you're now riding along again. This time not in a chariot of gods or flying horses, but in a creaking ox cart, creaking not from wood, but from memory. You pass puppet trees, puppet windmills, puppet silence. This is the part of the performance where the Dalang slows everything to a crawl, not just for dramatic effect, but to lull the audience deeper into that soft trance between attention and sleep. Your breathing syncs with the rhythm of a trotting cowbell. 1 beat, 2 beat, pause, and then just as your eyelids begin plotting rebellion. Bang! A clash of cymbals jerks the screen alive. It's a raid. Not a real one, of course, but the puppet version. Abstract chaos. Lines of jagged leather clash mid-air. Limbs tangle. Shadows blur. You're not even sure who's fighting who. And maybe that's the point. Historically, these puppet battles serve multiple purposes. For one, they added drama. After all, it's not bedtime theatre without at least one epic scene of existential violence. But more deeply, these moments symbolize the conflict stirring beneath ordinary life. Rice farmers didn't just battle drought or weeds. They fought politics, spirits, and yes, sometimes each other. Puppet wars were a safe stand-in for real tensions. And here's your fringe fact. In some regions of Java, Dalangs use special red-tinted lamps during these war scenes, casting eerie, bloody shadows across the screen. It didn't make the puppets scarier. It just made everything feel more urgent, like something sacred had cracked. Historians still argue whether those red-lit sequences were warnings, rituals, or mere artistic flair. You suspect it was all three. Javanese tradition has a habit of folding practicality into poetry. Back to your story. The grandmother is gone now, vanished into the folds of scenery, perhaps. The boy stands at center screen, staring into nothing. The baby puppet has reappeared, oddly enough, now dressed like a tiny soldier. You can't tell if it's tragic or adorable. Maybe both. Then, out of nowhere, an elephant puppet. Yes, an elephant. Massive. Ornate. Carved from thick hide, painted gold, with painted wrinkles so realistic you almost reach out to pet it. It doesn't fight. It simply walks. A slow, deliberate march across the screen, as if searching for something lost in another lifetime. You wonder, who made that puppet? How long did it take? Who decides when the elephant appears? Is it in the script? Or did the dalang just feel like unleashing majesty at this precise moment? There's no answer. Only the sound of a flute, rising. The scene slows again. Post-battle hush. You realize you've just witnessed one of the most sophisticated theatrical forms on Earth. Pretend to wage war with leather silhouettes and ambient bells. And you bought every second of it. The boy is left standing in the aftermath. Alone. Puppet rubble at his feet. He looks older now, though no one changed his shape. Just the lighting, the tone, and your perception. He doesn't cry. He doesn't speak. He just reaches into his puppet tunic and pulls out, of all things, a tiny puppet book. He opens it, reads, silently. And with that, the next transformation begins. The dalang shifts gears. The music leans back into strings and breath. You hear a new voice, female this time, delicate as rice paper folding. It's the boy's mother, but she's not a puppet. Not tonight. She's a shadow drawn by firelight alone. Her story begins. A tale inside a tale. It's not uncommon at this stage of wayang kulit for a bedtime story to be told within the performance. An echo of storytelling within storytelling. The meta layer that somehow makes you sleepier and more alert at the same time. She talks of a mountain that never slept. A cursed peak that pulsed with dreams, fed by the snores of nearby villagers. And one brave girl who climbed it. Not to conquer it, but to find out what the mountain dreamed about. You're not sure if this is the boy's dream or the audience's. And maybe that's the genius of it. Here's something you probably didn't expect. In old central Javanese courts, puppet masters were sometimes summoned not just for entertainment, but for spiritual balance. A king might call a dalang to redream the court after a bad omen, believing that the puppets could rewrite fate by whispering better stories to the universe. And what is this story now but a gentle rebalancing? As the girl climbs the dreaming mountain, the screen slowly darkens, so gradually you don't notice at first. A slight dimming, the puppets shrink, even the elephant has gone. All that's left is sky. Puppet stars begin to flicker. You could swear one winks at you. This entire session, Battle to Bedtime Again, is designed to mirror the structure of wayang kulit itself. Cosmic drama sandwiched by earthy comedy and quiet emotion. A full meal of feeling. You yawn, the good kind. And as you do, the boy finally lies down. Not in a bed, not in the village, but under the mountain of dreams. The puppet book folds shut, and the flute plays one last note. A note that hangs in the air longer than it should, like it forgot how to stop. You close your eyes, just for a second, and in that second, the whole world turns to shadow. You wake up inside a shadow, which, to be fair, is pretty on brand by now. The screen glows faintly, as if lit from within. No puppets move yet, just a soft gold square in the dark, flickering like a memory refusing to leave. The gamelan instruments are mostly silent, except for one slow, deliberate note from the gender, a kind of metallophone that sounds like the wind catching a secret and dragging it across the room. This is intermission, but not for you, for the dalang. He wipes his brow, sips something from a tiny earthen cup, likely ginger and palm sugar, and gently shifts his weight on the banana log he's been squatting on for 5 hours straight. His calves are made of myth, but you keep going. The next story begins without fanfare. 1 minute, silence. The next, an old man appears on the screen. He walks in slow, curved loops. He's hunched. His puppet hands tremble. A staff pokes the ground every step, like he's mapping out a path he's already walked 1,000 times. And on his shoulder, a chicken. Of course. That's right. This section is all about comic relief. And yes, that includes poultry. In wayang kulit, humor isn't just tolerated, it's sacred. The dalang often introduces clown characters, called punakawan, to deflate the tension, poke fun at gods, or straight up break the fourth wall and roast the audience. It's bedtime storytelling at its weirdest and most wonderful. You've got these world-shattering legends happening, and then some bug-eyed puppet with a potbelly interrupts everything to rant about the price of coconuts. Tonight's clown is Seymour. You've met him before, though maybe you didn't notice. He's the one who never looks like he belongs. His puppet is squat, lips curled into a sideways smirk, nose bulbous like a potato lost in deep thought. He's technically a divine being, but also a servant. A god disguised as a village fool. No one knows what to make of him, including, famously, historians. Yep, historians still argue whether Seymour was originally a local deity, a political satire, or a relic of even older fertility rites. Some think he's based on a rice spirit. Others insist he's just comic relief with a divine resume. All we know for sure, he gets the biggest laughs and the deepest truths. Tonight, Seymour is giving a bedtime lecture to that chicken. Yes, really. The chicken sits there, beady-eyed and motionless, while Seymour rants about why humans can't sleep like birds. Why must we build beds? Worry about dreams? Check our horoscopes? Chickens just plop and blink, and that's it. That's the secret. The audience laughs. You do too. Not a loud laugh, just one of those slow, sleepy exhales through the nose that turns into a smile before you realize it. Then, Seymour says something that lands, like a philosophy quote hidden in a fortune cookie. Sleep is not escape, little chicken. It is the body returning to the dream of the earth. Mic drop. Chicken nods. The puppet version of word. It's easy to think all this is just comic nonsense. But in truth, this mid-show foolery has deeper roots. Javanese shadow puppet shows often stretch past midnight, sometimes until sunrise. The light from the oil lamp never dims, and neither does the dalang's voice. The clowns give the audience a mental breather, and for many, it's during these absurd exchanges that the deepest messages hide. After all, who listens more intently than when they're off guard? Back on screen, Seymour leads the chicken to a straw mat. They prepare for bed, complete with puppet-sized blankets and a tiny bamboo pillow. You can't help but admire the craft. Someone spent hours shaping that chicken, and days balancing its comedic timing. In the next breath, Samar addresses the audience directly. Don't think this is just a joke. You're the chicken too, trying to fall asleep in a world that keeps crowing. Another flute cue. And the story folds again. Now, we're inside a dream. The chicken's dream. Puppet clouds drift by. Seymour floats on one of them, lounging like a lumpy demigod on vacation. This dream is bizarre, as all good dreams are. Clocks melt. Temples stretch toward the moon. A fish reads a book aloud while a tree claps politely. In the audience, a child falls asleep against their father's leg. That's the moment the dalang was waiting for. Because this next bit, this is for the dreamers. Back in the dream, the fish reads, "A time will come when shadows forget their puppeteers. When the story ends, but the characters keep talking. You wonder what that means. Maybe it already happened. This is your one quirky tidbit for the night. Some wayang kulit performances were said to be so powerful, the puppets had to be buried afterward, literally placed into the earth and covered, so their stories wouldn't linger too long in the air and disturb reality. Imagine going to a play so intense you had to perform a burial ceremony for the props. Now that's theatre." The chicken wakes up. Seymour snores. The puppet sun rises. And just like that, you're back in the real world of the play. Though, at this point, you can't really tell what's dream and what's not. The clown wanders off, muttering something about coconut pancakes, and the screen dims again. This section of the performance is nearly always the emotional reset, a palate cleanser between deeper narrative arcs. But it's also a nod to the very human need for laughter before sleep. You can't fall into rest with war drums still ringing in your ears. You need a ridiculous chicken monologue. You feel the yawn coming, and then another. Your brain's trying to keep up, but the pace has slowed again. The dalang has started breathing through the rhythm, letting the music fade into near silence. Even your thoughts tiptoe now, and that's how it should be, because in just a few more moments, a golden deer will walk across that screen, and you'll need to follow, quietly, softly, like a chicken finding the perfect place to dream. The golden deer enters from the left. No, not a real one, not even close. It's crafted from rawhide, stiffened by generations of smoke and story, edges darkened like it just tiptoed through a dream too long. Its antlers swirl like gusts of wind turned to bone. Its hooves tap silently as the dalang flicks his fingers, barely visible behind the screen, and brings it to life. You barely register the transition. One moment, it's a chicken's world. The next, you're in a golden forest of puppets and lamp glow, chasing illusions and legends that seem to shimmer with every breath. This deer, according to the dalang, lives in the forest of Gunung Kidul, an actual place full of limestone hills and caves. But in tonight's version, the forest is an in-between land where time stretches and gods sometimes walk without their masks. You follow it, through tree-shaped shadows, over rivers of hammered bronze light. This is the soft, mystical heart of the wayang tradition, where bedtime stories drift from moral parables into something subtler, more esoteric. Here, tales are less about heroes and villains, and more about balance, longing, and transformation. The kind of stories whispered to children not to scare them, but to help them make peace with what they'll never understand. Tonight's lesson? Sometimes chasing beauty makes you lost. The deer is, of course, a metaphor. The prince who follows it, Rama from the Ramayana, is noble, strong, and kind, but also tragically flawed. He sees a golden deer and believes it's a gift meant for his beloved Sita. He chases it, loses her in the process. Historians still argue whether this entire section of the Ramayana was a later Javanese addition, a regional flourish to make the moral hit differently for island audiences. Some argue the deer represents temptation. Others think it's a reference to elusive truth, the kind you can glimpse but never catch. Either way, you can't look away. The deer dances, it turns, it vanishes. Rama stumbles. You feel a tilt in your gut. That quiet oh no of bedtime tales where you know the hero just messed up big time. And here's your quirky fact. In some remote villages, dalangs would alter the ending of the golden deer sequence depending on the moon phase. If it was a waxing moon, the deer might escape. A waning moon, the deer gets caught, but turns into smoke. No one could ever agree on the proper ending, so they made the sky decide. You're now watching puppet moonlight shimmer through puppet trees. Somewhere faintly, the gamelan taps a heartbeat rhythm. And Rama? He's lost in that golden forest, just like you. It's a strange place to be. The kind of narrative lull where the action has paused, but everything feels more urgent. You sit there, heart quietly tightening, wondering what you would have done if you saw that deer. Would you have chased it too? Spoiler, you already have. Every time you scroll at 3 a.m. looking for the perfect sleep sound. Every time you buy that one candle that promises serenity, but smells like regret and hibiscus. Humans love golden deer. We never stop chasing. The dalang knows this. So he slows things down. Rama breathes. The puppetry sway. And then the screen goes completely dark. For a full 7 seconds. No flicker. No silhouette. Nothing. That's not a mistake. That's the shadow of choice. Dalings have used this blackout technique for centuries. An intentional pause in the action to make the audience feel suspended, uncertain. It's a form of narrative breath-holding. A way to ask the audience, what happens when your hero is no longer visible? You shift slightly. Then, like a whisper, a new light emerges. Dimmer, more blue than gold. A cave appears, cut from crumpled cloth and backlit just enough to make it feel cold. Rama has wandered into the cave of the hermit. The hermit, by the way, is voiced in a completely different tone. The dalang drops into a rasp. 1 part thunder, 1 part coffee grounds. You can feel the age in it. The time layered like sediment behind every syllable. This hermit doesn't offer answers. He offers stories, fragments, warnings carved into silence. You barely notice when your breathing slows to match the rhythm. The hermit says, chase the deer long enough, and one day it chases you. Classic bedtime paradox. Then the puppet vanishes. No dramatic exit, just gone. The cave closes, and now Rama is left in silence again. You sit with it. So does the prince. And the dalang. This is not a heroic moment. It's a tired one. Which is kind of the point. Because real sleep, the deep, healing kind, often comes only after we let go of the chase. Whether it's golden deer or missed emails or someone else's dream you accidentally made your own. So, Rama finally stops. He walks back the way he came. No deer, no victory. Just a quieter heartbeat and the first hint of dawn. This sequence always lands differently, especially at this hour. You realize slowly that the story's not about losing, it's about stopping. About how peace isn't found in catching the beautiful thing, but in knowing when to rest. Even now, you feel the softness crawling into your limbs. The deer's glow still flickers behind your eyelids when you blink. Somewhere, far off, the gamelan picks up again, just a soft cascade of notes, like pebbles rolling downhill. Rama doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. Neither do you. You just follow the path back, not chasing anything now, just letting your feet find the earth again. And then comes the part the kids always love. Not because it's exciting, though it is, in a quietly bonkers way, but because it breaks all the rules. You're back in the Creighton, the royal palace, but it's upside down, literally. The screen flips, the shadows come from the floor, and everything sounds a little off. The puppets move in reverse, their arms jerking like they've forgotten how joints work. This is the dream realm, or more precisely, the dream within the dream. The dalang, whose voice has held steady for hours, now takes on a sing-song rhythm, part lullaby, part low-budget horror film. And right there, center stage, is the puppet of a sleeping child. Just a small figure, swaddled in ornate cloth, eyes closed, lips painted into a perfect dot. That child is you. Don't fight it. Everyone watching the show becomes the sleeper. It's part of the performance. This moment where the dalang shifts perspective and the whole audience quietly agrees. Yes. Okay. This is about me now. A buffalo talks. A coconut tree argues with a fish. Somewhere, a shadow of the moon yawns so dramatically it sucks a cloud into its mouth. You're deep into wayang, shadow puppetry designed for dream sequences. Rare, rarely recorded, and almost entirely improvised. Dalangs use this style to depict the inner fears, hopes, and mischiefs of their characters. And by extension, the watchers. Historians still argue whether wayang was meant for children, shamans, or nobles coming down off opium highs. There's evidence of all three. But what's clear is that it plays with logic, like it's clay, stretching scenes sideways, folding time until you're not sure what part of the story you're in anymore. You sit, staring at your puppet self, watching them sleep, which, if you're paying attention, is exactly what you're doing right now. The effect is oddly comforting. You see the puppet child toss slightly. From behind the screen, the dalang adds faint whispers. Not words, just breathy shapes of them. As if dreams have a language you've forgotten, but almost remember. Then, in an inspired bit of stage magic, the child begins to float. Technically, it's just a bit of fishing line and excellent hand control, but it feels like levitation. The child puppet rises and begins to fly, not up, but inward, into the folds of her mountain that was once a hat that became a cloud. You chuckle quietly. It's absurd, surreal, but it works, because your brain is soft now, malleable. You're letting go of logic just enough to follow this strange puppet through a labyrinth made of lullabies. And somewhere deep in there, behind a curtain of stars, crafted from pin-pricked leather and a very clever rotating candle, you see something unexpected. A woman made of bark and bells. She doesn't speak. She just gestures. And the puppet child sits beside her, curling into her side like a kitten into warm laundry. This is the Dewi Tengen, the lady of the calm side. A character almost never named, but always there in some form. Her presence woven into the silences of these late-night stories. She's not a hero or a villain, or even a guide. She just is. A manifestation of stillness, of hush, of enough. Quirky fact. Time. Some Darlangs insisted on placing a single clove under their tongues when voicing her. They believed it sweetened the tone and softened the edge of human speech, so she would sound otherworldly. One Darlang swore it made his audience fall asleep faster. He also claimed a coconut tree tried to marry him once, so... Grains of salt, people. Still, the lady is soothing. She holds the child. And you. And time slows down even more. In some versions of the tale, she offers a riddle. What runs but never moves? The answer is breath, or thought, or... The Dalang lets you choose. You sit there, oddly grateful for the ambiguity, because clarity's overrated anyway. You feel your eyes flutter. The screen shifts again. Now, the puppet child is walking through a field of umbrellas, each one taller than a tree, swaying gently. They aren't open, mind you. They're closed, all of them, like long, elegant pods standing upright. You don't know what it means. And that's okay. Wayang isn't always about meaning. It's about mood, texture, the slow drip of story into your subconscious until you're swimming in metaphors and don't even mind the weird ones. Your puppet self picks one umbrella, taps it. It blooms. Silently, fully, with the grace of 1,000 silk petals. Inside is a chair. You sit. You, the puppet, the dream. You all sit. And around you, the umbrellas tilt and lean as if nodding approval. The Dalang whispers, "Let the shadow sit where the body rests." And that's it. The lights go out again. You blink. You breathe. You're here. Wherever here is. Puppet, dreamer, listener. And just before the screen fades entirely, a single image remains. A candle, impossibly tall, flickering gently as the wind tries but fails to blow it out. Just one moment more. And then, darkness. You don't remember waking. Not fully. You just arrive. Back in the half-reality of the shadow show. The screen is dim now, the candlelight gentler, more amber than flame. The puppets barely move, swaying like they're as tired as the Darlang must be. It's nearing the end, and everyone knows it. But the most enchanting part of wayang kulit is how it ends without really ending. There's no grand explosion, no villain's defeat, no wedding or coronation. Just this quiet tapering, like a lullaby softening into a hum. And right now, you're floating in that hum. The puppet child, you again still, sits on a boat carved from a curled leaf. It drifts along a painted river, slow as honey. There's no urgency, no destination. Just movement. Gentle. Persistent. Like breath during sleep. You notice the Darlang's voice has changed. It's lower now, slower, like an old cassette tape played at half speed. He's voicing the river now. Not a character, just the river. Giving it a voice like distant thunder wrapped in silk. The river speaks of forgetting. Not as something sad, but as something kind. It says you don't need to carry everything. Not all stories want to be remembered. Some just want to be told once, heard once, and allowed to fade. The historians, of course, hate this part. They argue whether these endings were deliberate metaphors or just a result of Darlangs improvising their way toward a yawn. Some believe the final scenes were spiritual in nature. ritual closures designed to cleanse the audience of tension before sleep. Others? They say it's just artistic laziness in shadow form. You watch as the puppet child lowers their head. Not in sadness, just tiredness. The kind you feel in your bones, in your soul, if you believe in that sort of thing. And then, tiny detail, you see it. The darling himself, stepping partially into the light. This almost never happens. But in certain traditional villages, it's custom for the darling to reveal just a sliver of himself at the very end. Not fully, just a hand, maybe a foot. Just enough for the audience to remember. This wasn't magic. It was a person, a craft, a story woven by human hands and human breath. And now that hand, bare, leathery, humble, reaches out and gently lowers the puppet child onto a painted mat. They're tucked in. You can't explain it, but the gesture hits hard. Because somehow you realize it's you being tucked in. No flashy strings, no final monologue, no triumphant music. Just a simple act of kindness at the end of a journey made of shadow and light. And here's your last quirky detail for the night. Some puppeteers used to add the faintest trace of perfume to the mat at this moment. Sandalwood usually, or frangipani. Something barely there. Just enough for the breeze to catch and drift toward the audience. It was their way of saying, this is the dream now. You let your eyes close. Not in a big cinematic way, just slowly. Like the story asked permission, and your body said, yeah, I'm ready. You barely notice the screen going dark. You don't register the audience whispering its way out, or the gamelan players beginning to pack their instruments. You're still drifting down that puppet river under a sky stitched with paper stars. And the dalang? He finishes like this. He whispers an old phrase. Not Javanese, not anything official, just something handed down from dalang to dalang, like a family heirloom with a cracked frame. Roughly translated, it means, sleep now. The shadows are home, and that's your cue. So now you let go. You let the flicker of candlelight in your mind fade to a soft ember. The screen is gone. The puppets are resting in their wooden boxes. The dalang's tools, his chisel, his lamp, his voices, are packed away with the stories they carried. Everything's quiet, not empty, just still. You feel your body settle into the sheets beneath you, the way the puppet child curled into the leaf boat, the way the story curved inward at the end. It's not about understanding now. It's about allowing, letting each image, each whisper, float gently down into your breathing. You might still feel the edge of the river in your thoughts, or see the silhouette of the lady of the calm side, her arms wide, her presence silent and sure. It's okay if you don't remember the details later. Not every dream survives the morning, and that's part of the charm. So let the shadows drift where they want. Let them wrap around you like soft cloth. Let them carry your thoughts gently into rest. You're not alone. You're just between the stories now, and they're still telling themselves, quietly, somewhere beyond the screen. Sleep well, shadow dreamer. The puppets are quiet now. The story has folded itself away. And you? You're exactly where you need to be.